What's going on today, YouTube? This is Michael, and I have a special guest, Bob Hooker, with us today. Bob, how you doing?
Doing well.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. What did you do for a living?
What I did for a living was design and develop software systems. Worked at the Gannett, which is the owner of numerous of newspapers, including the Tennessean in Nashville. Worked for Ingram for a period of time, which distributes books. In Atlanta, I was a business partner with IBM for about 11 years, and then before that, I was a subcontractor with the Army Missile Command in Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. Tell me a little bit about the Missile Command job.
Well, I tell you what, many of those projects, I don't know how, are still classified, but I tell you about one of them that's a little bit funny. When I first came on board with them, they had signed in 1978 a contract with Altman Corporation out of Stamford, Connecticut, and they were contracting with the United States Army. And it was for a laser scanner. And the laser scanner was using a process called the Trekline digitizing system. And to go into it, it's you're reading pixels and such as that. And there was only, at that time in 1978, and we're talking about a long time ago, 40 years ago,
Oh,
there was
yeah.
only like 5 that could, in the United States, that could read a size 8 by 11 up to a size E engineering drawing and store it into a computer system and retrieve it, make modifications, and store it again, or you could delete it, or such as that. So you had that flexibility. I know that doesn't sound much now, but back then that was quite something else. So the Army was looking for something that would do a little bit more of their specifications. So I came on board. They'd written code for a while, and it was slow. So we had to pick up the speed in the programming, rewrite it, streamline it, and make it work faster. And finally, we got it to the point that it was doing so. We had several program analysts getting involved with it. And program analysts, it's kind of an older term now. They're software developers or software engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Once that was completed, I was working on several other projects. Went to Minneapolis for a while, and then finally went to Houston, Texas to work with an oil company, with the same company, but it was a contract with an oil company, and also a small contract with NASA based upon some work that I had previously done. And one time, this is where it gets a little bit funny, as I was at the Galleria with a friend, and she and I had gone to the movies, and we kind of walked around. The Galleria in Houston was a big mall. I guess it's still there, but it was supposedly, had high price, big box type stores like Neiman Marcus and such. And we were just kind of walking around, enjoying it, having lunch, having a day together. We walked into this electronics store, and these were the early days of those kind of stores. And we looked around. They had Apple II computers, and they had this, that, and another in there. Well, they had a video. And I was sitting there, it was a rock and roll video, and I can remember who it was. It was a solo performance by Stevie Nicks. And I was sitting there watching, and I asked the sales guy, I said, is this on a VHS or a Betamax? Which that was the hot format back then. And he said, no, this we're talking about, this was about 1980. He said, no, these are on Laserdisc. And he showed me the platters. They were big, looked like a vinyl, or as we call them now, or LPs as we did then. You could store a movie, maybe about 2 or 3 of these discs would store a movie at the time. So they're much bigger than DVDs. And I was just like, I've never seen anything like that. And I said, you can write to this? He said, you can only read from it. You cannot change the information on it. You can only read from it. I thought to myself, here we were writing what we did last year and thought we were on the cutting edge of technology. And here they are restoring movies and videos and such as that on Laserdisc. I said, it's changing. Technology is just changing so rapidly.
Oh, yeah.
And so even back in those days, you could see it. Well, I looked up a few years ago, I guess probably about 15 years ago, about that system we wrote, direct line digitizing system, and they had patented it. But when the patent ran out in '87, nobody ever repatented that because the technology is so far beyond that by 1987. It was ridiculous.
Well, let me ask you, Bob, what year did the Apple II computer come out? Do you remember what year?
You know, the first time I saw an Apple, I think it was 77, because I had gone to San Antonio. The company I was working with had sent me to San Antonio to work on this data point computer, learn from this data point computer, which it was to learn assembly language. And I had taken that in college. And back in those days, not many people write in assembly now. That's machine language, or virtually some very similar to machine language at the same level as that. It's one instruction of assembly generates one instruction of machine code. And but I'd come back from that, and then I had to go to Cincinnati to the Federal Home Loan Bank up there to get some magnetic tapes and bring them back. I sister was a courier, and that was in let's see. I went to San Antonio in November, and in December I was up in Cincinnati, and I walked into a store and they had an Apple computer. I do not know if it was an Apple II or just one of the first Apples or what. I don't know. But I was just so curious, and the price tag on that thing was way out of what I could afford. You know, several $1,000s.
Oh yeah, they were.
And you didn't have a disk drive on that. I mean, there was no diskette drive, a 5 1/4 floppy or anything like that. Which that was like the first diskette drives that came out on those type of hardware. I mean, you're talking about hooking up a cassette tape to it. So I mean, you know, it was just a basic computer and such. I think it ran a Motorola 6502 chip. I don't remember. I mean, I'd have to go back, look up in Wikipedia to be sure on that.
Yeah,
But
a lot of people couldn't afford, those Apple IIs when they first come out. I mean, like you said, they were, $1,500 or more.
More than that. There were several, and they were pretty much stripped down compared to computer is now. I mean, a laptop you can get for just a few $100s is, of course, it's by far a faster processor, but you have internal disk drives and everything like that. I mean, back then it was very little. I mean, what people were affording were Commodores and Radio Shacks, which they got nicknamed those Trash 80s, and they were Radio Shacks ran a Z80 a microchip, which was a hot chip back then. That and Intel, and then you also had Motorola and such. But you had the Commodore, which was, and a few others out there. I worked on this direct line digitizing system was a Z80 chip using. It was on a Kremko System 3, and it was essentially like a mini computer, as they would call it back then. It was kind of set up with a workstation and two 8-inch floppy drives, which were,
Oh yeah.
Remember that on that. But we had to unload it. The Plessey microprocessor that read that could only read a tape drive, so we had to use a teletype machine, print off paper tape, and we had to roll it up and send it to them so they could feed it into their Plessey microprocessor.
Yeah. Oh wow, that was really old school. I remember.
Oh, yeah, it was old school. It wasn't that. It wasn't.
I remember the Commodore. The Commodore. That was a good computer. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, we're going to go from your job to a little bit on your hobbies. Now, you were into karate, I believe, at one point.
Years ago, I had years and years and years ago. I'd been when I was a kid, I was in the boys' club. Now it's the boys and girls clubs, and we did boxing. And I remember the boxing gloves were about the size of my head. But I loved to box, and we were, and of course back then it was, as a little kid, it was just learning to hold those gloves up high, pretty much, and not get hit in the face. But it's I boxed a little bit in my 20s as well. Well, about 20 years ago, it has been. It's been over 20 years ago. I was diagnosed with diabetes back in '97, and it was hard to control. I did, I exercised, and walked and did a lot of push-ups and sit-ups and everything you did, every stuff. I'd worked out in a gym when I lived in Atlanta, but I didn't get back into that type of training as such. And I needed something more formal, and I thought, my barber had known martial arts, known karate, and he told me. I asked him one time, just curiosity, I said, "Where did you go get? Where did you train?" He said, "Oh, right across the street over there at Danner's Karate Center, and under Donnie Danner." And he told me a little bit about Donnie Danner. And Donnie Danner was, I tell you what, he's the toughest guy in these parts. He's, in my opinion, he's
He's a super nice guy too.
Yeah,
I've met him, and
he sure is. He sure is. Unless you get him on your bad side, then he'll ride you down. But anyway, he was top notch, world class. He finished, I think, in the top 5 in the world one time. He beat someone either second or third place in a world championship in Greece, and he's traveled all over. He's got his black belts from in Japan. I mean, Tokyo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's telling you something. It's not from somewhere around here. So when you're training under him, you're training from one of the best.
Oh yeah.
But it's he is. I went there and started training. Well, my life was changing. I came down with I was diabetic. I had to exercise. My kids were grown and they were moving out. And my marriage had broken up. So there's a lot of changes in my life, and basically what it was I had to control the diabetes,